Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We do have a quorum present, including Mr. Conley, Mr. O'Connell, Mr. Amoroso, Pierre Fazioli, Mr. Ponarelli, Mrs. Griffith. So we have a quorum. Also in attendance is Mike Walker, representing Commerce RI, and staff Ray Levy, and our counsel, Amy Goins. So just, I'm sorry, and Keith is also here from the planning department who will talk about the comprehensive plan. So just before we get started, I just wanted to provide an update for folks on the project across the street. I spoke to the developer last week, and they've been pre-qualifying people who could purchase the properties at Ivy Street. They pre-qualified 45 purchasers who will be placed in a lottery, which will take place sometime over the next couple of weeks to determine who will be allowed to purchase those properties. And just a reminder that the price units of these units are is a mix of affordable and market rate units depending on your income level. But just a breakdown is one single accessible ADA unit that will be priced at $232,000, and you can't exceed the area median income of 80%. There's 4 3-bedroom units, which you have to be at 60% of area median income or below, which will be for sale for $170,000. There'll be 3-bedroom units where you have to be at 80% or less of area median income. They'll be priced at $233,000. 1-bedroom unit, which is market rate, so you can earn up to 100% of the area median income for $294,000. 2-bedroom live-work units where you have to earn less than 80% of the area median income will be priced at $208,000, and then 2-bedroom units priced at market rate where you can earn up to 100% of the area median income priced at $264,000. So they have, like I said, up to 45 pre-qualified purchasers, and once the lotteries determine who those purchasers are, expect to see those units hopefully sold in the next couple of months and then occupied fairly soon. But I just wanted to give an update because they've been having open houses throughout the summer, and they had the ability for people to apply for the lottery, but you still had to pre-qualify based on certain credit conditions and your income. So I just wanted to make that aware for the folks listening in. So first order of business is to vote on the minutes of August 13th, 2024. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Great, motion passes. A couple of housekeeping things we want to do tonight before we continue the public hearing. Each year, we have a report that's provided to us by an independent company that illustrates how the taxes are performing at Kettle Point. So over the years, I've done this presentation. Sometimes I've abbreviated it, but this time I kind of did the original presentation, which I think it would be helpful for a lot of the new members who may not be as familiar with it as far as what's happening at Kettle Point. But let's give you some background. Kettle Point, was a property, and I'll get into the history, but it really is a good example after being here for 20 years, what the Waterfront Commission can do. It's sort of what underscores our mission. It really was a very underutilized site, a vacant site, for a number of decades, and now it's turned into a place that supports housing, jobs, and obviously access to the waterfront. So the first slide speaks to the history. For some time, the site from 1930 to 1985 was home to 25 petroleum storage tanks. I think Atlantic Richfield was the company that was there, and maybe some other companies that had these big tanks there. Or mobile, okay, yeah. So the soil was obviously contaminated, was fenced off. There was no access to the shoreline. It represented a real environmental hazard to the community, and the property value prior to the development was assessed at only $2.2 million. The next slide just shows some aerial views of what the property looked like up until the mid-1980s when those tanks were taken down. You can see substantial. You can see actually the outline on the first first picture to the left or to your right, how it laid out, how the tanks went all the way out to where the pier is. And that's how the oil came in by cargo and then was piped into these tanks and stored there. Over the years, these tanks weren't exactly, they weren't meant to last forever. There was eventual leaking into the groundwater, which led to the contamination. So, after the development, you can see the site was, the tanks were taken down in the mid-1980s. Even though the tanks were removed, the site was still considered a brownfield, and the soil and groundwater was still very contaminated. But you can see the outline of the property. You can see the pier way at the front there. You can see where the train tracks kind of went through the property, which now is the bike path. So, very interesting to see how even despite the tank, it looks like a nice piece of property, but essentially was still highly contaminated. So as the development began in 2015, 2016, and I'll go through the different phases of it, but now fast forward to 2024, we've got public access to the waterfront. We have 20 plus new parking spots behind University of Orthopedic that service the East Bay Bike Path. We obviously got the new pier, which is a 600-foot boardwalk that's open to the public that gets a lot of active use in the summer. And even all season is 62 new townhomes, 228 apartments. From what I understand, all the townhomes are fully occupied. I believe all the apartments are fully occupied as well. There might be occasional vacancies, but there's no large segments of vacant apartments. Obviously, the new medical building there, they originally had 225 employees, but I think they're probably over 250. It's a pretty substantial piece of the major part of University of Orthopedics. And fast forward, this report will illustrate is when we started pre-construction, it was 2.2 million in assessed values. The property values through the most recent assessment report show that the values exceed $98 million. Again, just to sort of visually show what the site looked like before it was fenced off. Even though it was fenced off, people were, made holes through the fence, and there was access to our property. Again, people were trespassing and probably exposing themselves to harsh chemicals, not knowing what was out there. As you can see to the other slide, it's a much more welcoming piece of property now with a very nice wall. And I know, Ray, you were involved in the development there as well. This is just a view of some of the overview of the condos and the apartments and some of the units. And then, of course, the next slide. This talks about some of the views people get from the University of Orthopedics property that overlooks Providence and the bike paths. I know people go out there and they watch the fireworks on the 4th of July, both the Providence displays and the East Providence displays. And it's very active among fishermen, and it really is a stunning sight. Having a west-facing shoreline, really, this particular parcel is full advantage of that. Just to get into a little bit of the numbers, go to the next slide. This graph just shows what the growth in assessed value was in the property when construction began. Like I said, it was about $2 million, but as development took place, and each year the assessor would assign a value to the property based on the construction. So you can see substantial growth in the property, where the overall value is over $98 million. But the large blue sort of area represents what we call the incremental value. That's the increase in the value attributable to the new development. And that's that development, that increase in the value generates the revenue to support the improvements made to University of Kettle Point to pay for the roads, the water, the sewer. All of that was not there. So the money that's just generated at Kettle Point pays for those public improvements. There's no citywide money going into those improvements. It's just strictly based on the value of this increase at the properties within this unit, within this district. There's nothing outside the district that contributes to the improvements, the public improvements, including the utilities and so on. So the next slide just graphically shows how that works. So as the property value increases, the incremental value goes up, and that just generates taxes. So the way it works, 70% of the incremental value goes to support the public improvements, the bond that paid for those public improvements up front. 30% goes to the city's general fund, which supports not just the city but school budget. And then the base value, which was, at the time, the assessed value was only $2.2 million. That was $67,000 in taxes. That always stays with the city. That never goes away. So this split of 70-30 is a pretty healthy split, despite the public improvements being made there being serviced by largely the residents of Kettle Point. The city still receives 30% of the revenues there. And I'll get to some of the number, what that actually means in numbers. As of December 31st, 2023, total values are, like I said, $98 million, which represents about a $95 million increase. Incremental value based on the city's collection rate history of 98.5%. That generates about $1.7 million in annual taxes available. 70% are go to the TIF fund, which is $1.24 million. That pays the debt service and the bond to support those improvements. 30% goes to the city's general fund, which is $532,000. But since the revenues that are being collected at Kettle Point are more than what's necessary to pay off the TIF bond, an additional $251,000 will be transferred to the city at the end of this fiscal year, which will bring total taxes going to the city of over $783,000. So this shows that the assessed values that drive these revenues are continuing to contribute to not only paying for the support, the public utilities at Kettle Point, but also provides the city with a substantial amount of money. The next slide speaks to a video that played. We're not going to play it tonight, but it just, again, is a little video that we made. That's a hyperlink that we put together a few years ago. But it just graphically shows the difference of the property before and after. And again, I think it's a nice way to illustrate what the Waterfront Commission was meant to do, was to take properties like this, older industrial properties that were a liability, and turn them into a community asset. We'll go ahead and upload this onto the website. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that despite the additional of the new apartments and new homes, I spoke to the administration. There's been no major significant impact to the city's water system, wastewater system. It's been being able to fully accommodate this development. There are 5 school-age children living in the development, so it's not like it's overrunning our school system. I know traffic on the parkway is always a very sensitive issue, but I don't believe that anyone can speak to a traffic jam in front of Kettle Point. I know turning left can be a challenge at times, but I think it's fairly manageable. There's no reported increases in crime or calls for service for fire or ambulance and so on. And so, this is a real life case study of when development takes place. Not all of the impacts are adverse. In fact, they're positive impacts. Obviously, there's challenges for certain different developments have different attributes, but I think this is overall a very good case study of what a positive development in leading our city compared to something else that was just vacant. And it probably would have never been remediated unless a local developer can step forward and partner with the city, where the city would make these public improvements that would allow for the property to be remediated. From what I understand, it was like 30,000 cubic yards, Ray, that was remediated at the site. So, which again is obviously that would have seeped into the groundwater, which could have been very detrimental to the groundwater supply there in some of the neighboring community and also the Upper Bay. So just wanted to provide that. We'll have this on our website along with the independent report that shows these numbers. But East Providence is one of the few cities that have done a TIF. We just have some examples of just how TIFs work. These are just illustrative examples, but again, we have enough safeguards in place. So even if the revenues don't support the debt service payment, the city's general fund or city's obligations never going to be impaired. If there's a shortfall in the revenues to support the debt service payments, so this would be a special assessment placed on those properties within the district. So there's really no recourse to the city here. So it's really been, I think, a net win for the community. And just wanted to report that again. We provide this report every year. Usually it's in August. We didn't get it in time for the August meeting, so I wanted to be able to present that tonight. If anybody has any questions. Thank you. Next order of business is discussion from the planning department. I know that Keith Burns is here to discuss, I guess, the update on the city's comprehensive plan.
Oh, thank you, and apologize, I'm losing my voice here, so maybe hard to hear me. But the adoption of the new comprehensive plan, it's been a long time coming for the city, but we reached a big milestone last month when the planning board recommended approval on August 26th after a public hearing with just some bunch of minor edits to the plan. So the next step with that will be the city council's public hearing on adoption of the comprehensive plan. And after they do that, assuming they approve it, it will guide land use decisions in the city. There is no date scheduled for that yet. When we asked the city council, they wanted to wait until either December or January. So it'll be a few months before we have that public hearing. And after the city council approves it, the next step after that is the state's approval of the comprehensive plan. But it only takes a city council approval for it to guide local land use. The state can step in and, request certain changes if certain things don't meet their state guide plan, but they have been reviewing drafts all along, so we don't expect any real changes there. There is a waterfront chapter in the city's comprehensive plan, but it largely just references the waterfront district plan from 2003. It doesn't come up with new goals or recommendations. It does recommend updating that 2003 plan, which I'm sure is a goal of the Waterfront Commission. That's where this stands now.
Thank you, Keith. That's one of the things I wanted to kind of sequence as far as when the expected adoption date is. But we've been talking about updating the waterfront district's plan for some time now, but we wanted the city's plan to be, completed first, and it's nice that that's done. So I expect that we would probably be issuing some sort of our request for proposals to look at the city, the waterfront district's plan to see how it can work dovetail with the city's comprehensive plan, specifically the chapter.
Right.
So in terms of the public hearings, it's any major themes that came out of the public hearings that we should be concerned aware about in terms of dealing with the waterfront?
I don't think so. I mean, the public hearing the planning board had, we had some good comments from the public. I don't think there was anything particular related to the waterfront or goals related to that.
Any other questions for commission members for Keith? I know it's not really a matter of public hearing, but is it okay if we take a question? Sure, you can come up. We can. I don't know. Can you sit over there? People can hear you on the mic. They won't be able to hear you on TV if you don't. Just hit the button.
I have one quick question, thank you. Director Brins, did the word hotel come out of the Metacomet sub-district uses?
It did, yeah. That was removed from there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That was a good catch on your part.
Thank you. Any other questions for Keith? Well, thank you, Keith. We'll keep updated on when the city council expects to have hearings. And then but in the meantime, we might be think about developing a scope of services or request for proposals for the waterfront to do a similar update to the plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next order of business is discussion on updating ordinances for consistency with the recently adopted Rhode Island general laws. I know Amy brought this up, and there's been obviously a lot of changes at the General Assembly last session as it deals with land use planning and some approval processes. So it would be good to hear how that impacts the waterfront.
And I'm glad Keith is here because I wanted to coordinate with Keith and the planning board for scheduling purposes. You'll remember last year, the Waterfront Commission adopted a revised inclusionary zoning regulation based on state law that was enacted in 2023. A new law on inclusionary zoning was enacted this year to take effect on January 1st, 2025. So once again, we'll need to revise our regulation on inclusionary zoning. Some of the changes that were enacted last year have been rolled back. So inclusionary zoning is where a developer has to set aside a certain percentage of their development as deed restricted affordable housing. And under the regulation that's in effect now, based on the law in effect, developers get a 2-for-1 density bonus, meaning if they have to provide one inclusionary unit, they get 2 extra market rate units. That will be rolled back to a 1-for-1 density bonus starting in January. And the percentage of inclusionary units has been reduced from 25% down to 15. So it's rolling back a little bit of the changes that that tended to balloon developments, perhaps in ways that developers didn't even intend. I think the municipalities push back on that. So that will be coming to the Waterfront Commission's desk soon. And in addition to that, I also wanted to raise the possibility of eliminating the requirement in our ordinance for certified mail. So in 2022, the state law requiring certified mail for zoning and planning applications changed. Under state law now, certified mail is no longer required for development applications that go before the planning board or for applications that go before the zoning board. Our board is a hybrid board of one of a couple unique creatures of state law where we grant both development approval and zoning relief. So that law that was changed in 2022 didn't affect us, but I think we may now be the only land use board in the city that still requires certified mail. A certified mail, from my understanding, changed a little bit after COVID. I think the green cards are not signed for anymore in some cases. So this would be optional. It's not a requirement. So first, before I draft that, I wanted to take the board's temperature and see what you think and also get the opinion of the planning director, bless you. And also make sure that if the draft ordinances are reviewed by the commission next month in October, then they'll also have to go to the planning board and eventually the city council. So I want to make sure our schedule aligns with the planning board schedule.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the certified mail, I would say like to, conform to whatever the standard practice is in the state. Whatever the board is doing. I know it's an expense to developers, but with a lot of online notices right now, I think the intent of notifying people is still very possible through other channels. But we still would be required to place ads in the paper and things of that nature.
Yes, and you brought up another point that I forgot to mention. In 2023, state law was enacted that requires cities and towns, so for zoning and planning applications, any public hearings have to be noticed on the municipality's website. Right now, we post our application materials, our agendas, but I don't know that we specifically post notices of public hearing on our own website. We post them as legally required in the newspaper. Newspaper notice would still be required, but that could be considered requiring us to post notice on our own website.
I'm willing to entertain some proposals for discussion, and obviously those will be discussed at a public hearing. And obviously comment will take place, so I don't know if vote that notice requirement.
I don't have any comment, as long as we comply with what is done typically here. But we should be advertising on the website.
Typically, the certified mail return ensured that everybody received notice for both the municipality that at the hearing, but also for the developer's benefit, that someone couldn't say, I wasn't told at a later date. So how does that ensure that doesn't happen when you don't have a record of receipt?
I think really the key thing always was for certified mail. The key thing wasn't receipt, it was being sent. And so the certified mail, you had to submit your proof of mailing. For first class mail, you still have, for notices sent by first class mail, you still need to submit proof of mailing. But receipt is not relevant under the law.
One last question, Amy. The new inclusionary zoning that was adopted by the state, how do they handle the in lieu payment option? Is that still an option for the development?
It's still an option only if the municipality chooses to enable it, and applicants who provide a fee in lieu or construct inclusionary units on a site other than the development, so the off-site option, those aren't eligible for the density bonus. So only projects such as Metacomet where the inclusionary units are on site would be eligible for the density bonus.
This would only obviously impact any development that has not yet been submitted.
Right, it would only apply to applications certified complete on or after January 1st, 2025.
Great. Yeah, certainly would entertain looking at those at the next couple of meetings, and we could, update our ordinances to be conforming.
Okay, so if you want, you could make a motion to direct staff and legal counsel to present ordinances for consideration as discussed.
Have a motion to that effect? Steve, seconded by Mr. O'Connell. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we're going to continue on with the agenda. The next item is a continuation of public hearing on the Metacomet Property LLC's application for its proposed development located at 500 Veterans Memorial Parkway. I believe the applicant's here and has a series of items to update us on the reports and so on. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Belinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Fazioli. Again, for the record, my name is Josh Berlinski. I'm an attorney with the firm of Darrow Everett, representing the applicant, Metacomet Development LLC. Just a couple updates for the commission before we go into tonight's presentation. First, in response to Mr. Fazioli's request, I believe at last month's hearing, we had the financial consultant Forward Planning amend his report to address East Point, and we sent that report to the city. I believe it's been uploaded to the website. We continue to work on the remaining diligence items and are making fairly good progress on each of those fronts. With that, I think I'll turn over to tonight's consultants. We have 3 presentations for you tonight. The first one from Matt Merva of Bowler Engineering is going to provide an update as to the completion of the drainage and utility plans, which had been outstanding for some time. They were completed last month. We submitted them to the city. They've been submitted to PAR for peer review. Matt will provide a brief summary of where things stand and how that all turned out. Next, we're going to have Ashley Sweet, who's a planner from the firm of Weston and Sampson. And Ashley was previously involved with this proposal a number of years ago. We have asked her to come back to, in effect, refresh this commission's recollection on the compliance of the project with the city's comprehensive plan. This is an important step for both this commission, and then obviously when we go before the planning commission for their recommendation, we'll be revisiting this analysis. But we've been making substantive submissions. There's also a legal and regulatory component to this, and Ashley's going to speak to that in greater detail. She has acted as planner throughout the state. She's been a consultant for a number of years. Her expertise is significant and unmatched in the state, and we're confident that you'll find her report holds a great deal of sway. And then finally, we're going to conclude tonight with Paul Bannon from Crossman Engineering. Pursuant to the request of the city and PAR as part of their peer review, Crossman submitted and completed a comprehensive traffic analysis, which brought all of the materials forward under one roof, so to speak, and updated certain elements of that study as well. We submitted that report to the city, I believe, last week. It's also been uploaded to the website, and Mr. Bannon has a brief presentation to speak on that as well. And obviously, Mr. Merva, Ms. Sweet, and Mr. Bannon were available for questions from both members of the commission as well as the public. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Matt Merva. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Again, for the record, Matt Merva with Bowler. I'm going to keep it pretty brief tonight. We do have you know, a 70-page submission package that is available on the website. It's in front of engineering, it's in front of the peer reviewers. But essentially, it's collected all of the comments and feedback we've received over the past months into a conformed set of documents for review and approval. I'm just showing kind of the cover sheet here, which is the updated color rendered site plan. But there are numerous detailed sheets on utilities, grading, drainage, infrastructure, landscape lighting, that also form the basis of that package. Updates from the previous set that respond to some of the bigger moves that we made on the site plans, based on great feedback that we received. And I can run through what those are quickly, but essentially the reconfigured the building G, which is the residential building on the north-south axis entrance, to allow for more streetscape and planting in front of that building. We reconfigured the entry drive into the grocery anchored center. It's got a little more curvilinear aspect to it, a little softer. We've increased the buffer and berming along Lion Ave. We've also increased the berming, the buffering along Fort Street at the Phase 1A maintenance building. Various grading and drainage improvements that have come out of discussions with DPW and the peer reviewers. So we feel like what we've got in front of you now is a comprehensive set that incorporates the changes that we've discussed over the past month. I don't want to get into too much greater detail, and unless there are other questions, I'd rather yield the time to Ashley and Paul tonight, who will be able to speak on those. Glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, sure, Matt. Just a quick question again for people who might not have seen the previous hearings, but obviously, as you replace brass and that type of service, and you replace it with asphalt, describe in general terms, how do you respond to that in terms of keeping the stormwater or surface water on site, so it's not causing any type of an adverse impact to other properties in the neighborhood or across the street or down the street and so on?
That's a great question, Bill. What we need to do is to capture and hold that stormwater and release it into the locations where it was already going before, but essentially the same flow as it was before. So that requires storing it on site until it can infiltrate at a rate that would match the previous flow. So those calculations have all been provided to PAR Engineering. They peer reviewed our original submission, had a few comments on approach there, and some modifications that we've made as a result. And the new plans we do believe are going to satisfy their comments.
And then I know that EM isn't overseeing the stormwater aspect of this. It's is it CRMC?
RMC.
So they obviously look at the plans and see how it impacts the cove and runoff of that nature. So they're being updated as these plans are developed.
They'll have oversight over this.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead with the next witness.
Ashley is going to present now. I have a couple more copies of the report that I will submit to the Waterfront Commission tomorrow, as well as the presentation itself that Ashley's going to go over, and those will be available on the website.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Sweet. I am a team leader with Wesley and Sampson in our planning group. I have been working in Rhode Island in the planning field for about 20 years. 17 of those were in municipal planning in various communities throughout Rhode Island. You have in front of you a report that I have pulled together, and I have a presentation that will walk you through the high points of the report. And I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. If you'd like to just stop me, please feel free to do so. Next slide. So what I'd like to go over with you tonight is very high level, just a brief project overview. I know you're all familiar with this project at this point. Speak to you about findings of comprehensive plan consistency, as well as consistency with the Waterfront Special Development District. Talk a little bit about the zoning relief that's being requested for the project. Also go through some neighborhood context issues, and then some findings and conclusions that are all contained within the report. I'll just kind of briefly summarize them in the presentation for you this evening. So as you're all aware, we're talking about the property at 500 Veterans Memorial Parkway. This is a proposal for a mixed-use development of the former Metacomet Golf Course. Includes 6.9 acres of open space and a 9-hole golf course. A total of 890 residential units proposed through a mix of multifamily rentals, duplexes, and townhouses. There will be 10% of those units designated as affordable, and approximately 153,000 square feet of commercial space that contains a town center and a grocery store with neighborhood scale retail. So to give you just a brief overview, some of this is a little bit of a repeat. I won't go into great detail here, but we're talking about a mix of commercial, retail, residential space, open space, and recreation space. The project attempts to really try to fit into the fabric of the neighborhood, pushing buildings back along Veterans Memorial Parkway with a roundabout at the intersection of Lyon Avenue and Veterans Memorial Parkway. And there is a report from Forward Planning that I'm sure that you've seen that speaks to the general tax revenue that can be expected and the job production that would be created, with over 3,500 temporary jobs for construction and 630 permanent jobs within its first year of stable operation. So wanted to talk to you a little bit about consistency with the zoning ordinance, and this project is requesting 3 variances from the zoning ordinance, and I wanted to go through those with you and speak to those. One of those is for a signage variance. This is to install a monument sign at the entrance. The district calls for signage to be placed on walls and to not be monument freestanding signs. And the reason for the request is that if we were to put signage on the buildings, they would be set back over 100 feet from Veterans Memorial Parkway. We would prefer to request the variance for this type of signage, the monument signage, at the front entrance, and allow those buildings to be set back. The intent being to protect the scenic view on the parkway. The sign will be built, at a reasonable scale to fit in with the character of the parkway and the signage that is already there. There is monument style signage on the kind of cluster of buildings adjacent. It would be similar, in form and function, but allowing a monument sign instead of requiring that signage that is on the side of buildings will allow those buildings to stay back from Veterans Memorial Parkway, which we feel is an important aspect of the project. We are asking for a parking variance. The requirement is 2 spaces per residential unit. We're proposing to provide 1.5 spaces. We would just bring to your attention that we think that that is a reasonable request, that approximately 59% of the units that are being proposed are either studio or 1-bedroom units. The parking requirement is a standard 2 parking spaces per unit, regardless of the number of occupants for the units. And so we feel that the 1.5 spaces is adequate parking for the residential units, being that almost 60% of them are probably going to be single occupancy units at studio or 1-bedroom units. And when you look at the overall parking requirements, it is 12 spaces short of the full requirement when you include both the residential and the commercial spaces. So overall only 12 spaces less than what would be required under the regulations for parking. We're also asking for a fenestration percentage variance. The requirement speaks to requiring 25% on building elevations. That is met on all of the fronts of the buildings, but we're asking for the some sides and rear elevations of the structures to not meet that full 25%. And the reason for that is that these buildings often require programmatic elements like kitchen storage and utilities, which would not work with the fenestration requirement. So while we will meet it on all the fronts, some of the sides and rears would be less than the 25% for that reason.
And I think you need, just for the people watching on TV, describe what fenestration is.
The requirement is that you have like windows and openings is at least 25% of the side of that structure is required to have those openings, those windows. So really, as I said, it would just be sides and rears that would not meet that requirement. All the fronts would have that. Next slide. So I wanted to also speak to you about comprehensive plan consistency, and in the report, there is a table, it's table 2, which starts on page, I think it's 7, sorry, page 10, that goes through certain elements of the comprehensive plan, provides to you the text from the actual comprehensive plan, the location of that text, and then a comment as to how we believe this project fits with the goal, the policy, the action, or just the general text of the document. And so what I've done for you in the slides is just give you a very high-level summary of within each chapter that we've highlighted in this table, what the general requirements or requests are for development, and given you some examples of how we meet those. So the table itself goes into a lot more detail, and I'll just go through in a high level each of the sections that are contained in the table. So there's the first section is the general plan, and this is the text and discussion that happens outside of one of the specific chapters of the plan. And it talks about ensuring a quality of development. In this project, we're providing a range of housing, service businesses, open space, and recreation. It is truly a mixed-use style of development through a high-quality design. So we do feel that this proposal meets that requirement or that call for high-quality design. It calls for a promotion of a mix of uses. Again, this is truly a mixed-use style development where we have residential, commercial, open space, and recreation all contained within a single development proposal. It speaks about maintaining and enhancing open space and recreation opportunities. As you know, part of the proposal is to donate almost 10 acres of the land to the city for public open space, and there is currently a renovated 9-hole golf course, which is now open to the public. So we believe that it also meets that requirement. It speaks about scenic quality. As I said, we intend to set those buildings back from the roadway, keeping the smaller structures closer to Veterans Memorial Parkway, and also on the other side of the property, closer to the residential that exists. And we are keeping the larger buildings towards the center of the site, which will minimize the visual impact of the development from anywhere around it. Next slide. Going into more detail into the chapters of the comprehensive plan, we looked at your land use chapter, which speaks to ensuring that there's a positive economic impact and that there is diversification of the tax base. As you know, with the report that was done by Forward Planning, the project will generate about $5.3 million in taxes annually and will create about 630 permanent jobs in a range of different income levels, and also over 3,500 jobs, temporary jobs, as part of the construction. The land use chapter also speaks to the desire for the city to work through infill and redevelopment. This project does revitalize underutilized land. It aligns with the goals of compatible development and high quality design for the city. The land use chapter also discusses promoting flexible zoning. This property utilizes the waterfront special development district zoning and implements a diverse mix of uses. And throughout the chapter, it speaks to encouraging mixed use developments. We are presenting to you a self-sustaining community with residential, commercial, recreation, all contained within the development for overall economic and community development. Next slide. We also looked at your economic development chapter, which some of this repeats from the land use chapter, but again, spoke to the diversifying the tax base. We expect it to generate significant tax revenue, reducing a tax burden, and would be a positive tax it would provide positive income in the for the community. Your economic development chapter also speaks about the creation of job opportunities, and as we said, would create about 3,500 construction jobs and 630 permanent jobs in its year of full operation. The economic development chapter also speaks about the need to not only promote new development, but that the development that is promoted, that it respects neighborhoods. And so we've attempted here, to combine a commercial, residential, and recreational uses to create a sustainable development that does respect those neighboring properties. It does respect its location on an important scenic roadway, the Veterans Parkway, and have attempted to orient the design so that it minimizes the impacts on those adjacent uses. As I said, putting the shorter structures towards Veterans Memorial Parkway, as well as putting the residential uses adjacent to the existing residential, providing a buffer between those uses and really concentrating the higher impact development towards the center of the site. The chapter also speaks about facilitating development and redevelopment of underutilized property. Although a portion of the golf course will be redeveloped, it does maintain a 9-hole golf course that has been, redesigned, and it maximizes the benefit of the land through the redevelopment of the mixed use that's proposed. We also looked at your recreation, conservation, and open space chapter, which speaks to increasing recreational opportunities. This project provides a 9-hole public golf course from what used to be a full 18-hole private club. This will be open to the public, and it also includes the donation of close to 10 acres for open space to the city. The chapter also specifically speaks about protecting and preserving existing golf courses, and while the former 18-hole is now a 9-hole, it does preserve a portion of that golf course and again makes it available to residents, formerly as a private club, now open to the public. The chapter also speaks about bicycle and pedestrian amenities. This project proposes to create a network of shared paths within the development that would connect to the East Bay bike path through that system of internal shared paths, and will provide the ability for neighboring residential areas to utilize the space, not having to go out on the street, but through the development instead to a safe crossing over to the East Bay bike. It also talks about enhancing and expanding open space opportunities. The project attempts to maintain the scenic views that do exist. Natural areas adjacent to the somewhat more environmentally sensitive areas of the site are preserved in their natural state as they are. Part of that is the 9-hole golf course. The intent there is to reduce any environmental impact of the development by setting it back from the cove and the associated wetlands and buffer areas with that. And again, also provides almost 10 acres of permanently protected space for the city to hold. The next thing that we did was look at your waterfront plan, and there are 7 goals in that plan that are laid out, and we've highlighted what those goals are, and within each of those goals are a set of more specific requirements and standards, and we've summarized those here. The first goal speaks about general land use goals and talks about the desire for mixed-use development, preservation of the scenic views, infrastructure and transportation improvements, public access and open space, and the development of affordable housing, all of which we have attempted to achieve through the design of the proposed project. Goal 2 speaks about expanding and enhancing waterfront public access and transportation, specifically about enhanced connectivity. As I said, we intend to have those shared paths connect directly to the bike path. It talks about traffic flow. There's a proposed roundabout at Veterans Memorial Parkway and Lyon Avenue, which is identified. Roundabouts are identified in the waterfront plan as an appropriate traffic mechanism. It does speak about traffic signalization not being appropriate. And the comprehensive plan itself also in the specific district for this area identifies this specific location, that intersection of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Lyon Avenue, as the location for a roundabout. Next slide. The goal 3 is to enhance the waterfront special development district economic development opportunities. And a lot of this is very similar to the comprehensive plan, as it should be. Those documents should work in concert, but it talks about business attraction and supporting new businesses, job creation, and creating year-round activity on the site. And we believe that with the mix of uses that are being proposed, that we are ensuring a continuous year-round engagement on the property. Goal 4 speaks to enhancing the attractiveness of the project area, specifically about providing for structured parking. And while this project does provide for some surface parking and some structured parking, we've designed the surface parking so that it is not vast expanses of asphalt, but it has it's broken up into segments. It has sufficient landscaping throughout it to really create a feeling like you're not in a giant park. It also speaks about public spaces and well-defined streetscapes and gateways, with the installation of a roundabout at that primary intersection. We believe that would essentially create that specific gateway that would bring people through Veterans Memorial Parkway and then into the city via Lyon Avenue. It also talks about pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. The plan is designed with sidewalks throughout, and a connection to that bike path, the East Bay bike path across the street through the shared path system that's designed for it. Slide. Goal 5 speaks to protecting and enhancing the natural waterfront environment. As I said, we are staying away from the cove, staying away from the more natural and environmentally sensitive features on the site, and maintaining a buffer zone, limiting the development away from those. Goal 6 speaks to revitalizing existing commercial areas, enhancing the appearance and the creation of a gateway. As I said, the roundabout at Lyon Avenue as a key entry point to, in all directions, giving you access eventually down to the parcels right on the water. Goal 7, protecting existing residential land uses on Roger Williams Avenue and Veterans Memorial Parkway. As I said, there is proposed to be at least a 100-foot landscape buffer along the parkway to maintain the greenery as you drive along the parkway. And the traffic mitigation measures, as with the roundabout, managing the flow of traffic to prevent shortcuts through residential neighborhoods. Slide. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about the context of the neighborhood adjacent to the property. To the northeast, you have existing medium density residential development. The project attempts to preserve that current view. This is the area where there is a almost 10-acre donation along Fort Street, maintaining that neighborhood character, keeping the buildings set back from any adjacent residential uses. And the first set of buildings on the property on that side of the site are also residential as well. To the southwest, on Veterans Memorial Parkway and on the Cove, we're preserving the existing conditions there. That's the area of the redeveloped golf course. There is no new development near the Cove. And the entrance to the parkway is designed to manage traffic flow in and out of the site. We don't expect there to be any impact to the existing land uses to the southwest. To the east is also residential homes and small non-residential uses. We again believe that there will be a minimal change there, and they'll retain their current view of the golf course area. And to the west is the small office park I mentioned with single-story buildings. We believe the uses proposed will be compatible with this adjacent use. They are separated from the property by Lyon Avenue, and would, improve convenience between the two compatible uses without any real disruption to what is happening in that office park area. So just to summarize the findings that we came to as we went through your regulatory documents and compared them with the proposal that's in front of you, we believe that this project is appropriate and compatible in its scale of development, that it is proposing appropriate traffic and infrastructure improvements that are already contemplated in your waterfront plan and in your comprehensive plan. It achieves or partially achieves open space goals by obtaining 9.6 acres for the city to hold title to and preserve as they see fit. It enhances recreation opportunities by opening what was previously a private golf club to the general public. It provides for a mix of uses with residential, commercial, open space, and recreation all contained within a single project. It capitalizes on a redevelopment opportunity while still maintaining a portion of the recreation space and providing a mixed use residential and commercial development. It provides for a positive tax base. It establishes over 600 permanent jobs at a variety of pay scales, and it provides needed market rate and affordable housing for the city. So in conclusion, we have found that the project is consistent with your zoning ordinance, subject to the variances that have been requested, and we have provided a rationale for those variances in the report for you to consider. We believe that it's consistent with the goals, policies, and actions of your current comprehensive plan, and that it is also consistent with the waterfront special development. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Actually, this is obviously the first time we saw this tonight, so just some basic questions, and I'm sure there'll be more once we go through it in more detail. And on page 6 of your report, you talk about the phasing of the development. Fix there. Yeah. So phase 1 obviously is the golf course, which is already done. Phase 2 is really, I guess, phase 1A now, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So phase 3 would include $160,000 of retail and commercial development, 232 residential units based on the table here. So, and then the balance of the other units, residential units, there's no commercial development in phase 4, and the balance of about 660 units would be in phase 4. So phase 3 really speaks to the property that's, I guess, at the corner of Lyon and the Parkway. And necessarily the development towards down Lyon towards Fort really represents, phase that's, I would say, not immediately something under more of an outlier type of out year type of development necessarily. So in terms of short term, I guess, development that the city would look to see would be coming from phase 3, which would be 160,000 of commercial retail and 232. Okay, great. Another question just on page 7 under zoning ordinance consistency. The last sentence speaks to the building coverage for the site with approximately 7.5%. A district that permits 70% building coverage, and the impervious coverage for the total site is 33%. So the 7.5%, is that just based on the development portion, or is that the site including the development of the golf?
I believe it's the entire
Okay.
property.
It's one of the. And then lastly, you mentioned the zoning. Court Street line. I guess, Keith, the zoning there is R6. Yeah, which I think allows for 5,000 square foot lots, along with multifamily. There's a lot of multifamily in the neighborhood, 2, 3, 6, and 12 buildings, very close proximity. So the 890 units over the 60-acre development. That's roughly 15 units per acre. So I think we probably would consult with the planning to see how that stacks up with the zoning units per acre in the adjacent neighborhood to see if it lines up or if it's sort of an outlier. We'll check that out. Yeah, that's something I think that, again, as we go through this some more, some of it really. Other than that, I know that you referenced consistency with the old comprehensive plan, so I assume as the new one is adopted, we'll have to maybe do it just to make sure that the new plan doesn't radically change some of the findings. I mean, obviously this one's in place. So maybe just internally how the proposed new comprehensive plan lines up with regulatory. And I assume the planning board will have to do it anyway. In order to get it, consistency of use. Right, so you can say that into the mic. So this plan will have to be guided by the existing comp.
That's right.
Plan was under, okay, so that clarifies.
Yeah, even if the new one's adopted, because they submitted this
Prior to
during the, right, we'd have to go by the old one.
That's helpful. Any other questions from the commission?
Just a minor one. That table 2 should be updated so to avoid confusion going forward, because the numbers don't match the graph.
We'll make
So,
sure we do that and
Just minor housekeeping.
get you a new one.
Dave?
Yes, you mentioned the monument sign that you prefer for a variance for that. And if I heard you correctly, you want to have something similar to the office park sign that they have adjacent to them. Is that correct?
So I have not seen the signage design, but I can say with confidence that it will be designed to fit the general character of the area. It will have to be a decision, that you make independently on that sign, but I can tell you that with confidence, it will be something that will fit the general character. I use that as an example because that is not a building mounted sign. It's a monument style of sign.
Right.
But I haven't seen a specific sign design.
The term monument sign sort of scares people when they think of Route 2 in Warwick and those signs down there. And that's not what it's going to be.
I can tell you not what it's.
Good. It's Matt.
Quick, Matt Merva again from Bowler. The sign that Ashley's referring to has been in our rendering packages that you've seen to date, so it's nothing that would be a surprise. It's just what that style of sign is called. It's not it's not like the Bunker Hill Memorial or something. It's just a sign at the street that'll be tasteful and lit indirectly, and just have the main thing.
Any other questions from the commission? I know It's very helpful, and we'll have this uploaded as soon as we earn a receipt with it and make it available for the public. Obviously, since we just got it tonight, we urge commission to look at it, commission members look at it closely, and obviously work with Ray and the staff to, if they have additional questions, we could form those for the applicant at the next meeting. So I guess the next expert you have is traffic, everyone's favorite topic. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
The record, Paul Bannon, traffic engineer with Crossman Engineering.
So call up your presentation.
Okay, for the record, as Josh indicated, we have made a submission to the city. We provided update of our traffic impact assessment to address the peer review comments that were provided by our engineer. That was also updated to address comments received from the Department of Transportation. So we provided a comprehensive study to address both state and local comments as part of the initial review. I'll briefly go through where we are, reducing our effort, and provide a review of several items that we think the board would want addressed as part of what we did. That includes review existing traffic volumes, how we obtained them, why we obtained them, estimating future volumes for the project, go over the operational analysis that we completed, and we did a safety analysis at the request of the peer reviewer, and then we'll provide a summary of our next steps. We'll go over in detail the off-site mitigation plan, and we've prepared a simulation of the operations based on our operation. So as you're aware, we were retained to complete the traffic impact study with a supplement to the NAS study. That was prepared for submission to both the city and state for the design of the off-site mitigation. The NAS study was submitted initially for the city, and that was done, and they had been involved for several years as part of the initial process and working with the city on rezoning of the property. So we've provided an update of that study that was initiated back in the study that we've provided. It provides the documentation and analysis for the improvements that we've proposed. As Ashley had indicated, we're proposing improvements along the parkway that'll be focused on mitigating the impact and being consistent with the stewardship plan for the parkway and both the comprehensive plan for improvements along the parkway and original studies that were done back 20 years ago when the village on the waterfront, that waterfront property was being considered for development. So we focused on providing a design that is consistent with the comprehensive plan and minimizes the impacts to the parkway. We defined areas to address and supplement the study, including the major intersection of Lyon and Parkway, South Broadway, and intersections within the local neighborhood that would be affected by the project. Going over the existing traffic volumes, we did Vanessa had done a comprehensive data collection program. We supplemented that. we didn't have to get counts at all of the intersections because of the nature of where they were. So what we did is we were strategic, getting new data, doing automatic traffic report accounts for a 7-day period on South Broadway, Veterans Parkway, and Lion Ave. That provided us a basis to understand what's there today, how that compared to what was obtained previously. We also did manual turning movement counts. We established base traffic conditions based on that data and comparing it with the Vaness study using and balancing higher volumes. The Vaness study, the volumes that they used were completed during the COVID period. And they were actually higher than what we established as existing 2023 conditions. Their higher volumes were based on expanding and estimating what counts they did. And I think they up to 17, 18% higher than the actual volume to account for the COVID condition, estimating what was there. So post-COVID volumes are actually less, but they've been relatively constant over the Parkway for the last 20 plus years. As I indicated, we did not count all the locations. We reviewed the information, balanced them with the new volumes that we obtained, and we used any higher volumes that were appropriate to be considered. Also, the time of year we counted, base volumes are typically higher based on RIDOT data. We didn't take or reduce our volume, represent average condition, or our volume, base volume. Looking at that future condition, we estimated table 1 provided in within the new report. We estimate the volumes of traffic for the peak periods of traffic that we look at, typically for residential. It's AM and PM commuter peaks, and then for commercial, it's Saturday. So we looked at those periods and studied each of the intersections, knowing that under existing, how things operate today, under existing conditions, and what the future condition would be at a mitigated sign. We didn't look at a no-build condition, unsignalized or no roundabout lion, because based on the scale of what we're proposing, that's a given that improvements would be needed. So we went from existing and compared that to where we are in the future with the base volumes and mitigation that we propose. The volumes that you see in the tables presented, they are highly conservative. We are typically working on DOT projects where we want to be conservative in the design that we construct, because it's going to be design life typically is 20 years, but it'll be 30 or 40 years before DOT comes back and upgrades a roadway unless there are particular issues. So in this analysis that we did, we were highly conservative. We did not take into consideration or reduce the estimated volumes of traffic based on internal capture, which is typically done for mixed-use projects, where you have one element within the site patronizing another element of the site. So they would never leave the property. And so what we've proposed or represented at the table is they're all new. That someone that goes to the grocery store came from outside the site. So that's conservative in our analysis, and that someone that's going to the grocery store may go to another element within the project. We've looked at it as a individual trip generation, and these are the numbers. In addition, on projects, specifically commercial projects, there's a pass-by element that will range depending on the type of use. That can be 10%, it can be 60% of traffic that's already on the road. It turns in and out of the site. So they would already be on the roadway. and they would not be new, but they would be using our property. Those were not considered. They were all considered new. That's what these numbers represent. And we show what a future potential. So you understand the type of numbers that use would actually generate minus all the pass by. So we wanted to show, demonstrate that, and use that as a basis of our. The commercial component, which will the commercial component, which represents roughly 75% of the peak hour traffic, would have a distribution that's more even than, say, the residential use. So you have the morning commute. Commercial component opens up, mid-morning, to late morning, to the midday period is a higher or average condition. And that 6 hours between 10 and 3, 10 and 4 would, volumes would be relatively consistent. Wouldn't have a high for that. The once we estimated the type of traffic relative to volume, we had to estimate where it's coming and going. The commercial component, with the grocer being the anchor, we anticipate this project or this component of the project being a neighborhood type commercial element, shopping center. The grocer, most of the people in areas surrounding are presently serviced by shopping centers, the markets on Morton Ave, the Shores, the Stop and Shop, or the Route 6 corridor in Seacom. Stop and Shop, BJ, Walmart, post Whole Foods. So that volume, or that area of the community is highly serviced with this type of use. The area to the south is void of a grocer or competitive grocer. Going south into Riverside, Pawtucket Ave, Willett Ave, it's one market. An outdated, small Shores, prices that are high, quality on quantity of product is less than, when you have a highly competitive market across the street. So that area of the community we feel would be greatly served by this development. And that traffic, whether they go to that store or they go to Morton Ave or Seacom, to those stores, they're on the adjacent road. So we feel that this area of the community, the immediate neighborhood, and the Riverside area would be greatly enhanced and have this opportunity for use of this site. Looking at that, we provided figures in our report that showed the distribution based on that type of analysis of where our competition is, what the servicing roadways are. We looked at different distributions for the residential component, commercial component. So that's all been included in our study, and figures are provided for each of the periods for that. As he indicated, we typically look at the impact during the peak hours of traffic that are generated for the use, and that would be the residential component combined with the commercial component. Typically, for this type of use, it would be the PM peak and the Saturday peak. We looked at all the major intersections, starting from the south, Broadway, Lion Ave, on the Parkway, Mercer in the Parkway, and to get an understanding of the impacts to the neighborhood streets, we looked at the Fort and Lion Ave, four-way stop. So we wanted to show the type of traffic or volume of traffic service based on that distribution in its operational. In the report, we show what that distribution and overall volumes are. Slide, it shows the development itself and then the key intersections that we have. Based on that future condition as it's presented in Figure 5, we determined that improvements were necessary along the parkway. As I indicated previously, we would have, you know, that's initially had proposed control at a driveway on the parkway. When I got involved and spoke and worked with the team, having knowledge of the parkway, we redesigned the access to the property so it did conform to what was considered over 20 years ago to provide future access to the waterfront, but also service this development up on the parkway. So we've proposed the roundabout at Lion Ave. Our main driveway will be restricted from left turns out, so we're just shifting an existing driveway that has full access to a driveway on the parkway that has a restricted left turn exit and access. Primary southbound egress from the site will be from Lion and through the roundabout. So we feel that the design is proposed will be consistent with the consistent with the goals that have been discussed for the parkway and access to the water. Additionally, the roundabout will provide pedestrian connectivity, bicycle connectivity, Bay Bike Path, the element of concern because right now there are no sidewalks along Lion Ave. There is no crossing pedestrian access from the neighborhood. So we're going to be working with the Department of Transportation to provide a safe and efficient pedestrian and bicycle crossing between the site and East Bay Bike. The operational analysis we've presented both existing conditions, so we show the level of service internally within the neighborhood, the intersection, level of service A today. The only intersection that operates at a movement, I should say, that operates at a lower level of service is the South Broadway intersection. I was involved in that back when the middle point was being considered, and that's, I worked on restriping the roadway to provide the left turn. We couldn't before, so would back up or people would drive on the shoulder road dirt to get around, and that was so it's just, it's a better operationally condition what we're proposing there in the future, and it was also recommended in peer review. Geometrically, it's odd, so we're going to make it a conventional two-way intersection. Modifications to reduce speeds through the intersection, help people drive along the parkway up Broadway. With the concern, speed limit signs have been feedback speed limit signs have been put on South Broadway to help with trying to moderate speeds. So that is a concern. Under future conditions, that will remain, but we monitor that with the Department of Transportation to see what, if anything, needs to be done relative to operation. But the roundabout itself, excuse me, will operate efficiently and all the internal intersections as proposed. We'll work with the city in an effort to mitigate cut through and intrusion within the neighborhood. Excuse me, Mercer Street. And part of our initial application with the DOT, we, in coordinating with Public Works, we would propose to restrict that intersection with the parkway to a right in, right out. It's configured that way. It's a old type Y intersection. We can go left or right for both approaches. So it's an easy fix. The safety is a concern at that intersection because sight distance is insufficient to the south along the parkway, make that movement. And so that'll remove that potential cut through between our site. And so that's an initial element we will include as part of our DOT. In addition to operational, excuse me, analysis, we were requested to do a safety. So as part of the updated report, we've looked at site distances, driveway intersection, also design of roundabout, designs to provide for efficient movement to the, so we will provide those as part of our represented that. At this point, we've provided a comprehensive report. We've been submitted to the department, received a letter from them with what we've proposed. That letter we received back in June, they, which will allow us to submit a formal application with the actual design of the roundabout for final approval. As part of that submission, one of their comments was it's typically a requirement on DOT projects when we do roundabout internally that the roundabouts be coordinated and peer reviewed with an independent consultant, so a separate consultant. So the retaining the designer, they will work with us to provide the documentation needed in the design process for a roundabout. They'll also do a VISM analysis. That's a computer program that allows you to provide detailed design treatments of a roundabout, particularly some peculiarities of a roundabout that are detailed in the VISM analysis. Also, you can see how that'll be provided as part of that. Excuse me. We'll also continue to work with the city on local streets. We understand, we've represented it operationally, the internal section, operator level service, we understand it's not the bar, it's the operational concern, it's the increase. So it's managing that traffic so it's sensitive to the neighborhood and appropriate for the neighborhood. Cars that are additional traffic is managed properly. Safety enhancements, traffic calming measures. So we'll continue to work over the project development to make sure that happens. Versa Street discussed options with public works to include around the school and field complex. Some modifications there that would essentially eliminate traffic from our site. So that's a long-term solution that we discussed easily. So through our site plan. We're just starting from the south. But starting from the south, we'll be transitioning 2 lanes going northbound and transitioning from 2 lanes to 1 lane in advance of the parking lot for the right side. And our driveway will be working on the design, whether we have a separate left lane or not, like 2 lanes to the roundabout. That additional lane will be a right turn in at our property, and then that right turn out of our property will pick up and create that second lane. Going through the roundabout, it'll be a two-lane roundabout on two sides, on the southern side. Each approach will be two lanes. We'll be designing it for that future access that was a requirement for the DOT approvals that we would consider that future access leg of the intersection. And as you go north, the transition from driveway. Safety, the office park driveway. We're transitioning to two lane heading south. We're going to put in a left turn pocket lane for them so they're not taking their rights in their hands as they do today. People don't. So we're providing separate along Lion Ave. We have our driveway component. And the vism analysis will show how that will operate, whether you make any adjustments relative to offset distance in the roundabout and our main residential driveway. We also have, so there's a lot of internal connectivity. So internally on the main roadway, all the traffic that's in the site doesn't need to go. We have driveways offline have actual pockets. Same with the residential. There are multiple driveways. So, the main intersection, which is a four-way stop, the eastern driveway will operate efficiently, and so the all the traffic into the site will be just wanted to show show up. Well, it's I had hoped, but this is a simulation that we use. It shows the operational analysis that we have completed in the study. This is a product of that analysis. So we use this to show.
You guys don't look at the screen, you're gonna miss it. Oh, it's right in front of them? Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
Wasn't here early enough. You guys were. But we use this tool to confirm our design, what we're doing relative to the traffic signal, that it operates with properly, that one approach isn't overloaded. Stacking lanes, the length of stacking lanes that are required if the queuing exceeds. We use this as a design tool. The vism analysis is on steroids for this. This is basic radii lane widths. The vism analysis is an actual, we use the actual CAD chart to simulate road layout. This is a tool we use. We also provide the public understanding of what we anticipate. This is a Saturday condition. Demonstrated both internally and on the parkway. Kind of volume and speed would be realized. With that, I'm available.
A lot to absorb. So just to kind of back up a bit, Paul, this latest report is a composite of all the previous reports, bringing all the comments and the input and bringing it to this next level. This is reflective of all the other studies that have been done.
Correct. Our initial study was focused on the DOT permitting aspect, but it did include information on the local level. on the streets because of the overlap. But we wanted to provide the city, based on review comments, more detail relative to the city component or element of the project. So that's what we've done as part of it. We didn't want to reinvent that old study, so we supplemented our study with information that's relevant to the city and address the peer review comments.
And you mentioned that the base data traffic count was expected in 2023 for this for the Parkway.
Correct. In the peer review is in agreement with the volumes that we have.
And then that data indicated that the average trips per day or vehicles per day on the Parkway are 16,000 and 18,000.
Right.
So just to kind of break it out, what would be the you said most of the new traffic would result from the commercial component, I guess, not necessarily a residential, because that's obviously morning and evening. But typically, what would you see as far as new vehicles per day after the commercial pieces?
We would look at probably 30% of less in traffic than what we presented in the study. That would take, well, actual conditions would be 30% less because of those actual infrastructure pass by. So, you're looking at 6,000 to 6,500 vehicles entering and then exiting the property on a daily basis. That traffic isn't focused on one point.
Right.
It's 40, 50% this direction, 40% this direction, 10 here, 10 here. So there's no point along the Parkway that's going to see 6,000 vehicles increase.
And then you mentioned on the rotary here, the roundabout, it's a left exit only heading south, right? If you're inside the development.
From our site, our access on the Parkway, you can only turn right. So if you want to go south from our property, you have to go up to Lion, take a left, and then take a right.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So if you wanted to go, you have to go down to Lion and then enter the rotary to go south. So if I say rotary, I mean roundabout.
DOT wouldn't like. You can say circle or round.
And then you mentioned on Lion there's two new access points. One closer to the roundabout, and one more towards across from I think the Jones's Pond area, that National Grid easement area.
Yeah, just before the Piercefield ball field.
Right, and that's really meant for not necessarily commercial traffic, but for people accessing the residential.
That will be the primary entrance for the residential. They're situated on either side of the commercial. Anybody from the Parkway, north south, is going to use either our main driveway up the Parkway or that first entrance. Anybody going to a residential is not going to go through the commercial component. They're going to
And
driveway out of these.
and none of the roads access Fort Street, right? It's on Lion. So Fort Street's in the back. Yeah.
Just to Fort Street is that emergency gated out.
And then you mentioned Mercer and the Parkway. I know we had some testimony. I know we're hearing some people concerned that Mercer would be a cut through as you come off the Parkway. You take that really sharp left. I've done that for the last 35 years. It's a daring left, but
Yes.
you mentioned there's mitigation efforts to kind of.
Yes, we've talked with Public Works and they're in full support of that change to make it a right in, right out. It will improve safety in the intersection. And it's very easy through signing and striping because it's actually configured that way.
Yeah, right now, it's rare that you see somebody taking a left onto Mercer to get on the Parkway, but it's allowed. But so that the idea would just make it a right turn only. Okay, so. And then one of the other questions I had was you mentioned delivery trucks in the previous hearing. How would you propose folks getting to the grocery store with delivery trucks? How would they access that?
That's all up the Parkway in the loading dock in the rear. I think going through a presentation of the loading docks. Use the screening, berm, fence, trees. The loading docks are in the rear for the that would also cost from 195.
Yeah, I mean, there are trucks that are on the parkway that are, box trucks and different trucks, but I don't really believe there's any tractor trailer allowed in the parkway.
No, only two delivered to a site on.
Okay, any other questions from the commission members?
Through the chair. This is not related to traffic, but you mentioned it, so I thought I'd comment on it. I would really question the assumptions you're making about the need for another market as far as that property. I live a mile from the Shore store you referred to. I agree, it's outdated and substandard, but you've got two major competitors, Stop and Shop and Shore. You mentioned Whole Foods. It's just a matter of time before Market Basket puts in a Market Basket in the property they put. The BJ's, I'm not sure who you envision the tenant to be, but I think the market is saturated. I mean, Stop and Shop is putting stores in this state. So, I mean, I think some of the assumptions you make, I would really question. It's not traffic, but you mentioned, but I just thought I'd comment on the record. I think those assumptions I would question.
You're talking thousands of homes that are in south and to the immediate east that are under service for market, that they have to go up to Seekonk to go to or immediately abutting Seekonk.
What? We've been living in that house for 25 years. We've been doing it for 25 years. It's part of our life. Yeah, I don't.
So
If you make that a significant burden, I'd find that amusing.
no, it's more that those opportunities exist for that part, the northern part of the community, north of 195. To the south, there is that only one market.
Okay, I mean, you people have experts in this. You have established competitors already entrenched in this marketplace. Unless, I don't know, I'm running out of names to think of. Maybe a Big Y or Road Brothers comes down here, but I just question that. I mean, it's not really traffic related, but you mentioned it. I wanted to comment.
Just one question. I'm thinking about the other retail stores you're going to have in there. There'll be restaurants and there'll be retail stores for different items that I would expect that they would want to be busy also from 6 to 9 p.m. Do you take into account that it's not a peak time, but there's still plenty of traffic for those people coming into this city center up till 9 p.m.?
Yes, but traffic is substantially less on the parkway after that period. So it's not an operational concern. Yes, there will be tenants that will be open till 9 or 10 o'clock with the restaurant. Not familiar with all the tenants that are being ordered for the square footage that's being proposed. But yes, there is a restaurant that could be open till 10 o'clock at night, but parkway volume is substantially less traffic.
One last question. When you say you're conservative in your estimate, you meaning your counts are higher, not necessarily lower.
Correct.
And you're assuming more intense use,
Well,
maximum intense use.
yes, both in base volume, we didn't lower our volumes to represent average conditions. The counts we had were typically higher than average conditions. In site, we didn't take into consideration or reduce our traffic volumes to account for known reduction in trips.
And then lastly, the roundabout. Let's propose, obviously, not only requires DOT permission, scenic highway review, and everything. I assume it looks like it takes in other property owners, that they would have to consent
Yes,
some of their land up to.
yes, we've made initial contact with the property owners. We've also engaged landscape architect that has worked on the parkway. He worked on the stewardship plan, thoroughly familiar with the parkway and its concerns in with the scenic highway. So we'll be part of the process and discussion with the scenic highway board to ensure that what we do is appropriate for the parkway.
So this report was just submitted last week. So Keith, has the city has a chance to review this at all, and will we be getting a memo back on the review? I was, right? Oh.
I don't think it's been substantially reviewed, and I think our engineering office is largely relying on the peer review process, but they'll also look at it themselves.
Just wanted to see if we'd be getting an updated memo, because this was one of the items that was on the initial memo with comments.
Right. Yeah, and that'll factor into any future memo on this.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? No. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Josh, I don't know if you have anything else for updates in terms of reports.
No, I am thoroughly chagrined, so I'm done for this evening. So, any questions from the commission and the public were,
Public hearing, so if somebody would like to come up and ask a question or make a comment, feel free to come up to the podium here and introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. I'm Heather Andrade from Ohio, from Metacamic Greens. And I just heard a little sentence that said improvements were necessary. They're not necessary because as it says in the comprehensive plan, as it says in the Waterfront District, the Veterans Memorial Parkway will be the development on the Veterans Memorial Parkway will not be more than the parkway can handle, in fact. I don't know if everybody's forgotten that, but that's in there, and I don't expect it to come out either with the new revision. So I'm just wondering what's going on with that. And what happens to that stone wall? Is that staying on Lyons Avenue? Stone wall to protect it. Okay. I'm wondering what happens with that stone wall because I believe Rhode Island law protects those stone walls that's on Lyons Avenue.
Oh, do you want to address that now, Paul, or? Okay. Yeah, I just want to keep track before we respond to other.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather stole my thunder a little. I wanted to reiterate, it is interesting to hear Mr. Bannon say that the scope of this development, it's a given that there has to be a roundabout, there have to be mitigating factors, there has to be off-site improvements, as they're called, to the parkway. As Heather mentioned, the comprehensive plan, the waterfront plan, city council ordinance, Metacomet subdistrict, Kettle Point subdistrict, Veterans Memorial Parkway subdistrict, all say that development along the parkway should be limited to the traffic capacity of the parkway. I don't know, as Heather said, why we never say that. Why we never say, why don't you just reduce the scale of your development and not have to ruin the parkway? I know you're saying that it's a benefit to us, but we wouldn't need it if you weren't building such a large development. That's one point. Another is, I sent an email on September 5th to Executive Director Levy, Chairman Fazioli, Director Brins, and Police Chief Franciconi, which I will read briefly. Well, I will read it, and it is brief. I'm writing on behalf of Keep Metacomet Green with requests that the Commission require Metacomet Properties to produce an updated public safety report to be subsequently peer reviewed. The increased traffic flow along the parkway from the additional, I said 11,000 in my email, apparently it's 6,000 to 6,500. The additional projected annual daily vehicle trips will be substantial. The addition of 30 daily delivery trucks, 60 round trips for the grocery store will be even more so. This figure does not include the other 60,000 square feet of commercial space, which could include a large pharmacy, a furniture and or appliance store, a hardware and or garden shop, and a general merchandise store. All units will have need for deliveries. If there are an additional 20 delivery trucks per day, say 40 round trips, that represents a total of 100 round trips per day. This does not take into account the 10-year construction traffic and delivery traffic to 890 units of housing. By law, trucks are prohibited on the parkway other than trucks making deliveries to a parkway address. Currently, very few trucks at all traverse the parkway and don't draw much interest from law enforcement. However, with the increase of upwards of 100 daily round trips by delivery trucks between the highway and Lyon Avenue, and with the additional 6,500 vehicles, what burden will this place on our police department? Will traffic officers be able to distinguish delivery trucks from non-delivery trucks in the effort to enforce the law? Will they pull them over? Will they even have the time to bother? The Public Safety Impact Report submitted to Marshall by Christopher W. Bruce on December 28, 2023, did not even mention enforcement of traffic laws as an aspect of public safety. As we know, that job is an important part of policing. Mr. Bruce stated that the short time given him, 1 month during the holidays, and the unavailability of much of the required data made his report, quote, less complete than I would like, unquote. He recommended in his conclusion a more complete study given more time. To our knowledge, the Public Safety Report has not been updated, nor has a peer review been conducted. At the beginning of this process, the Waterfront Commission agreed that all impact studies would be peer reviewed unless there was universal agreement that one was not necessary. At the Commission's public hearing on December 21st, 2023, Marshall listed a number of impact studies to be submitted, including the one on public safety, which came in a week later. At the close of the meeting, the Commission voted to accept the list. During discussion, Commissioner Amoroso asked whether peer reviews were part of the vote, and Chairman Fazioli said that they were. An updated study and peer review of this issue is necessary and warranted. The author of the Public Safety Report himself said it was rushed and incomplete. The Commission voted for the peer review. I submit this request for the record. Please share it with the other members of the Commission. Thank you. So I ask, will there be an updated Public Safety Report, and will it be peer reviewed?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the public safety report has to be finalized. I think it's been updated since the initial submission. I've spoke to Ray about contacting the chief for police and fire, and they mentioned that they have, they're aware of it, and they're just trying to dedicate the necessary resources to provide the data so that they can complete the report. So efforts are being made to complete the report. When that report is done, with the data that the original consultant needs, we will then ask for a peer review of that. If there are some constraints, this personnel constraints in both police and fire is one of those we want to implement what we discussed. Yeah, so we are expecting an updated and a complete public safety impact report once we have review and comments from both police and fire departments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to respond to the wall question?
Paul Pisano, Marshall Properties. To Heather's question, yeah, the final plans or the plans that are submitted in front of the commission do show that wall being removed as the final complexion. The grades in that area married to lines. Right now, the grade on our property is substantially higher, and that wall kind of holds it back. So in the final complexion, that wall gets removed.
And Paul, just to clarify, are there any protections of that wall being removed or any permits?
Not to our knowledge.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dan, want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
members of the committee. My name is Dan Bodwin. I live in Kettle Point. We got a nice, wonderful report about Kettle Point. Everyone loves living there, but good job. Just quickly, it's mostly process. Very glad to see more comprehensive traffic data. Has that been sort of reviewed again by PAR? Does PAR agree with that? All of his questions have been answered. Has your consultant told you that this is sufficient?
I believe that's still underway, that.
It's still underway?
It hasn't been,
Okay.
I guess it was submitted about a week ago, so
Okay.
process is underway by PAR and also by, I guess, internal city staff, as well as Keith mentioned.
Thank you. At the last meeting, there was discussion about a noise study, and I said I'd like to review it and submit comments. And Mr. Chairman, I think you invited me to submit comments, and I submitted them to Marshall as well. What's the process going forward? Will there be a peer review of the noise study? Will there be any other analysis of it? Any questions that I posed answered?
Yeah, I think we'll have to consult with staff about the need for a peer review, because we did mention that all the impact studies would have to have a peer review, so we'd probably have to look at that as well. I haven't seen your questions about, maybe I have, maybe.
I know you're a busy guy.
So I think that's something that we would probably expect a response to from the applicant or from
Okay.
staff as well.
Mr. Ray, did you get my? Okay, so
Yeah, I may
that
have-
can be distributed. I understand. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Sure, next.
Mike Teipel, East Province. The one thing I want to speak about tonight is that I'd like to reiterate Parkway, again, was established, I think, around 1906 by the Providence Parks Department. And I hope that all of you on this board are familiar with how the Parkway was created. If not, there's plenty of information available. It was a wonderful idea that was proposed back in 1906 to have a scenic parkway through East Province by the Providence Parks Commission. They also designated, I don't know, a dozen open space parks, and probably about half of those came actually in existence. But the only other parkway that's really in Rhode Island is the Oceanfront Drive in Newport, was developed partly by Olmsted. And as I think you all know, the parkway was developed by Olmsted Jr. And it was developed in the early 1920s in order for people to have a place for open space, leisurely drives. They didn't really understand modern day what we have today. Fortunately, we've able to continue that parkway for over 100 years. And right now, we're at a critical mass. And from what I've heard people speak, the level of traffic that they're expecting and the area of the traffic they're expecting, I don't really see the need for a parkway. It's coming from the south, it's making a right turn into that. My plea to you is that you really are the last position to stop any breakdown of the parkway, because each little piece that comes along is another little tear into the parkway. Pretty soon there won't be a parkway. So right now it is a parkway. You guys can really continue to keep it that way. I hope you understand the significance of that parkway. It's a 2.5 mile drive. It's not just a highway. The Department of Transportation, their main focus is to generate traffic flow. I don't really think their main interest is to be concerned about view or the esoteric feeling that people get. Maybe you don't really, I know all of you drive that parkway, and it's really a pleasure. There's 2.5 miles of no stops between the interstate and Pawtucket Drive. It's really imperative that we keep that highway. And the way I see it, the only way you can do that is to cut down, diminish this development somehow. I don't know how you're going to do it. It's going to be a hard task, but that's the only way I see it. So I hope that you keep that in consideration.
Anybody else from the public would like to ask a question or make a comment? So, any closing comments?
Just to refresh everyone's recollection. In 2015, there was a project approved called Village at the Waterfront. It took place in what we call the Chevron property on the opposite side of the parkway, which is now vacant and abandoned land. I don't believe there's a current development. That project was approved by an amended project plan. There was a TIF approved for that project, and it had a roundabout. Now, the project didn't come to fruition, and nothing's vested, and everything's expired, but there was a roundabout approved at that. Whenever that project comes to fruition and comes back to this commission, comes back to the public, there is no way that access can be provided there without a roundabout in order to meet the needs of the comprehensive plan. Set aside the viability of this development. If this wasn't there, when that happened, you'd have a roundabout. It is inevitable. This development's first. The roundabout has to be installed. Secondly, the Waterfront District Plan, which KMG has referred to on a number of occasions, is spoken to expressly in Ashley's report. That district plan from 2003 contemplated the installation of a roundabout on Veterans Memorial Parkway to contemplate future traffic on in East Providence along the waterfront. Now, to be candid and to be fair, it was at a different location, but the premise is the same, that there will be future development along the waterfront, along the corridor parallel to Veterans Memorial Parkway, for which a roundabout is requested and required. That was contemplated 21 years ago. The location is moved by virtue of development scheme having progressed further away from where the roundabout was initially proposed by the city, and now it's being put somewhere else by the development. But it is inaccurate to state that the comprehensive plan or the district plan are static documents that prohibit any further development within the waterfront district. That is not what they say. They say that as long as there are goals and objectives met, improvements and developments are permitted, proposed, and recommended. That is how municipalities thrive. So we have submitted a report by an expert, by a planner, that says that the roundabout is a component of a plan which satisfies those goals and objectives. We welcome any further discussion on this, but it is a misnomer and it is an incorrect characterization to say that a roundabout is not appropriate at that site. The city thought so 9 years ago. The city thought so on Veterans Memorial Parkway 21 years ago. And this is the time for it to get installed in connection with this project. With that, Mr. Chairman, we conclude our presentation this evening.
Thank you. Right. So I know there's still a number of reports that have to be updated and filed, and we'll obviously wait for peer reviews of those and see what the next steps are. But with that said, do we take a vote to continue the hearing?
There should be a motion. What? Yeah.
Oh, I have to discontinue the hearing.
Yeah, there should be a motion to continue the public hearing to the next regular meeting date of the commission, which is Thursday, October 17th.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye, thank you. Ray, staff report. You're on live.
Okay, that's better. I have a very short staff report. It actually tracks pretty much the one from last month with a couple of updates. The site archaeological report survey, not the report, but the survey has been done and completed, and it's in at Rhode Island Historic, waiting for a result, waiting for some comment. The second item that's on here is that there's a Rhode Island Ready permitting process for 9 Dexter that we have been speaking to Bobby Sykes at Power Engineering and the developer, John Savage. And we are preparing a draft agreement, or Amy is doing it. It's being negotiated right now with terms and conditions. There was a Live Nation, we already talked about that before. There's a 2025 commercial application, Rhode Island Commerce application has been submitted. It's online, Michael, so you can tell your assistant, whatever I can't remember her name, but it's been submitted to her with the exception of the audit, which is due next week. I have to get the PDF of the audit and upload it onto the website. Everything else is already on the website, and it'll be complete. And 111 Dexter Street, additional storage buildings are proceeding to construction. It was approved administratively based on an old permit that they had. They're just extending two of their storage buildings to what they wanted to build originally, and they're going to be doing that now. And that's all I have.
Ray, one last question. You mentioned
Yes.
the archaeological report being
Yes.
submitted to,
It's at Rhode Island Historic. Yep.
it hasn't been submitted to the commission. We haven't seen it.
No, we do not have it, and they already left, but they had requested a copy of it. And we responded to them and said that we don't have it yet because it's still at Rhode Island Historic, waiting for their comments.
Yeah, nothing's been forwarded to us, so.
No,
Yeah,
nothing
we
has.
have nothing on record as far as the archaeological stuff. Thank you. Any other questions for Ray? I'll take a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Hey, thank you. We're adjourned, and we'll see everyone on October 17th. Thank you.